We're gonna admit the person here.
Yep.
Done.
All right, well, good evening. My name is Dominic DiMaria. I am a sales associate for Porcupine Real Estate based out of here in Manchester, New Hampshire. And we're having a talk tonight about finding jobs in New Hampshire. And we've got a couple of folks here to talk about the experience. Mainly Nelson. Nelson, if you want to introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody on the from the East Coast. So I'm bound by honor to say good evening. So I'm Nelson Aquino, and I am I've been 20 something years in the international sales. Kind of that's my background. I do international sales for footwear and apparel companies. So managing brands all over the world, including mostly right now in my current role, Latin America is my area of focus. And I moved to New Hampshire. Mark Constance and I joked that I'm the slowest mover they've ever had as one of their customers, but I started this entire deal in 2015 and finally got it done in 2021. And so living over by the Concord area in little town called Chichester. I can invite all of you guys to come and visit anytime. And so a bit of my background experience is my degree is in economics and applied statistics. I enjoy all of that stuff, but I ended up working on international management many years ago and after grad school and kind of stayed the course. So that's really kind of my background there, Dominic.
Great. Just a little bit about myself too. I am currently a real estate agent. I've been so for about a year now. And prior to that, I had 20 years experience in the restaurant and food service industry prior to moving to New Hampshire. In that time, I was responsible for hiring and doing a lot of that. So I'm very familiar with the process of looking for people with that skill set. So I'm very interested to hear what it is on the other side of it, because I've never done a lot of that kind of work. Constance and Mark, would you like to introduce yourselves as well?
Sure. I'm Constance Spencer. I'm the associate broker of Porcupine Real Estate. I have kind of had one of those varied careers where I did part-time work and seasonal work and traveled around and supported myself in various types of accounting work over the years. And I've been a real estate agent since 2015 and the associate broker for about a year and a half now, I think. So I've also, in those variety of jobs, done hiring and training and managed a hotel, just random things.
Yeah, my name is Mark Warden. I'm the owner of Porcupine Real Estate. So currently I consider myself an entrepreneur, having grown Porcupine Real Estate from just me to our current team, which is 8 agents and 1 operations manager. And we specialize in working with Free State project movers and Liberty folks of all stripes, buying, selling residential real estate. I've had 3 different careers. I graduated from college with a business degree back in 1984. My first career was in sales and marketing for power tools, in which I covered regions of 7 states for a variety of years. I also covered Mexico, doing some international sales for a bit. Then I sold new homes in Las Vegas for big companies and big corporate structures. And then came to New Hampshire because of Free State Project and for Liberty in our lifetime, and got back in the real estate business, but a bit from a more self-driven, small firm approach instead of working for a big company. So that's where we are today. And we're really thankful to have our guests and our co-host here tonight.
Well, great. Thanks everybody for doing the introductions there. And we're gonna, Nelson has a little bit of a structure that he wants to kind of go through as we go through the presentation here. We're gonna be kind of focusing on what employers are looking for. So with that in mind, why don't we have Nelson take it away?
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. What I'd like to do is, if we can, I'd love for you to share some of your background, especially as we're speaking. And heck, now that we have Mark and that we have constants, we should also make the presentation richer by hearing from them. So rather than me blathering on for 45 minutes, maybe we have more of a conversation, but hopefully it also trips some questions, and some of the participants will have some questions for us during the discussion. But where I really wanted to bring is the employer perspective. And sometimes when we are searching and when we are interviewing and when we're getting ready and when we're looking for jobs, it's a very important thing to do. So we kind of believe that it's all about us, and I'm here to tell you it's not. And so we have to really keep in mind that, it's in a game, there's at least two teams and the other team gets a vote on who wins. So we really need to keep that in mind. And frankly, if we're going to be successful in the job search, it's really a sales process. What is the other side having in mind? What are their goals and what are they looking for? So I want to bring the employer perspective as part of the discussion. So I would like for us to cover really two main items, and each of these items can be, you can go on for hours on these things, and people do, and people make careers out of doing this. But I want to share a couple of things that I've seen from the employer side, especially on resumes. What is it that we see? What is it that comes through? What's successful and what's successful, what isn't? Some of those discussions will be fun to have in this forum. And then secondly, I'd like to talk a little bit about interviews and interview strategies and questions. And Dominic, you can keep me honest on time, but also again, if you want to throw some questions back at me, that would make everything richer. So from the employer perspective, thinking about why are they hiring? What's the problem they're trying to solve? Or think about it more plainly. What is it that they're looking for? And they are problems to hire. An employer is hiring somebody because they have a problem that they need to solve. And that problem is going to solve by adding a person. So as an employer, you can solve via systems, solve via investments, as in you can hire somebody outside, an outside company to do it for you, or you can have an internal person to come in and solve that problem. There is usually some kind of obstacle that's preventing the hire from happening as quickly as they'd like. From my corporate experience, there's always something, some kind of an approval process, budgets, timelines. So all of those things from the employer perspective kind of will color the experience that you have as a candidate. So I want to bring that into part of this conversation about resumes and interviews. So if there is nothing more, I'd like to start by showing you mine. I'd like to start by showing you my resume, or at least the one, to be honest, I have to update it. I haven't updated it in a couple of years, but when I used it last, this is what the successful resume looked like for me. And the reason I want to show you, not that my resume is so perfect, but if there is at least a point of start, a point of departure, I'll show you mine. Mark, I see I'm not seeing the messages, guys. So Dominic, if you need me to do something, you might just have to interrupt me because I'm not seeing the messages.
No, we should be okay. It looks like there's some issues getting in for some people, but we're working on it.
Okay. So I'll start share. Could you confirm that you can see?
Yep. Looks
okay,
good.
Good. So I wanted to start by sharing a little bit about what my resume looks like. And the reason I wanted to do that is it's one of those don't do as I say, do as I do kind of thing. So there are some things that for me are going to be easier to explain if I show you my resume. First of all, from the employer's perspective, I would like to ask you, when you're creating resumes, and I'll share with you a few resources in a little bit where you can find resources for resume writing. Some of you may want to hire professionals, but from my perspective, there are some quick ways that we can just click on the highlighter here, that we can look. So what I want to do is make it as easy as possible for the reader to read. Resumes will have a very short amount of time measured in seconds before they're discarded for something else. Why? Because even though it is a problem that needs to be solved from the employer's perspective, they have 1,000 other things to do. And so the hiring process demands a lot of time, demands a lot of resources, and they need to get through it quickly. Now, if there are HR people on the call, HR people, that's their jobs. They'll look at resumes, they'll have systems to sort out resumes for them, et cetera. But for me, as the business owner or as a business hiring manager, business person, this is not my daily. So I want to be able to see something quickly and find the problem, the part that tells me that my problem is going to be solved with this candidate, and make a decision from there as to how I move on. So my first ask for candidates from an employer's perspective is make it as legible as you possibly can. And if you think about what the employer is looking for and what problem it is that they're looking to solve, make it as easy as possible for them to find it. So in my resume, what I elected to do is I elected to use some words from other people, some words from my past evaluations, and I tried to put in a couple of the things that I think that at the level where I work, these are some of the things that they're going to be looking for. Then I'll go to a quick number 2, and I'll move down to my professional experience from there. The quick number 2 is really one of the things that we see a lot in resumes is people saying that things like visionary leader, innovative, highly effective, results driven. These are all very nice things. Or I'm looking for an opportunity to use my leadership skills. And this is all very nice sounding language. But as a business leader, I'm looking for something now. And I need to know, number one, that this person can do this job. So my second ask of you as a candidate is make it so that they see proof that you've done this job using data. So show them results. So in this case, I'm putting nothing is easier than showing them dollars when you're saying you need to quantify a result. You need to quantify an accomplishment. So accomplishments over responsibilities makes a much more powerful resume. Number 3 is that I wanted to say is you have a list of accomplishments. I would like for the resumes that I see to be structured in a certain way. So if you have statements, if you want to use, and there's some things out there called STAR and PAR, there's different models of doing that. As the employer, I don't really care how you do it, but I want to be able to see that you have what the problem has been, that you took an action, and what that result was. And that result is really attractive for me because it shows me what it is that you can do for me. So if I show you another example here, I'm saying I achieved this much cost saving, boosting these unit sales by doing X, Y, and Z. And this is a quick way for them. And what that does, if they can find it in a resume that's not too full, is it gives them something to talk about during the interview. So the third thing that I'm going to ask you to do is, so we talked about make it easy for them to read, have some proof on there, and then use a structure that when a reader reads it, they can see that there was a problem that you were able to solve and tell them that results. Not by telling them it made a big difference, but by saying I supported the increase of a 23% CAGR because of these actions that I took. Dominic, can you give me some feedback as to whether this resonates? Is this clear the way I've presented it?
Yeah, I think it's great. Again, I came from a very different background where I was dealing mostly with kids and college students who were looking for employment in restaurants or doing things like that. So I don't necessarily, most of the resumes I saw were half a page at best, and they were, I worked at this fast food restaurant last summer or something along those lines. All the information that you're laying out is fantastic. And I think it's very valuable. But in a perfect world scenario, they would all look like yours. In most of my experience, and again, this is very different backgrounds, in service industries, you're going to see it's going to be much more about the interview than it is going to be about the resume. I just want to make sure that they had a job and that they verify what years it was or something along those lines. So results, I would love to see that on a resume. Honestly, if I saw anything even resembling yours, I wouldn't even, I wouldn't hesitate to bring that person on. So.
One of the things that, to your point, every industry is going to be different. There's no doubt about it. We're going to have different industries, different ways of managing these things. And people are going to be at different levels. So I've been in my career for quite a bit, and I've got some stories to tell. If you're starting a little bit earlier, the idea is tell the story the best way you can. So one of the things that I wanted to do the same thing here, is let's share another resource for somebody that's perhaps starting a little sooner. And
Nelson, before you get too far, we do have a chat request that you zoomed in on your resume, so it's easier to see. Do you have that ability?
I could. I'm not sharing currently, right? I was going to switch to something else, but I can do. No worries about it. And if there are specific questions to it, I'm happy to discuss.
You can also share the template too. You had mentioned earlier, not in this, but earlier when we spoke today, the different resources for building a resume. So
yeah, that's what I was going to move next, and I could certainly zoom like that. Maybe that helps. That might be too much, but the main idea is make it legible, make it so people can see what they're looking for, make it so that your accomplishments are very specifically named out. So as you can see here, I even elected to put a little box here with anybody that's looking to hire a person like me is going to see, what has this guy accomplished? They always ask that. What's this person done? And I want that question out of the way right away. There's no doubt that this guy has done this before. He's done this job. They'll ask me about it, but I want that question kind of out of the way before. So that's not the main purpose of the interview. We're going to move to the interview in a bit. I'm going to show a couple more resume resources here, but one more point to your point, Dominic, one more time. The main thing you want to do is there can be no doubt that what you're doing, that you have the ability to do what you do. And the resume is your first tool to show that. So let me switch and go back up here. And yeah, there's a lot on my screen right now. So another thing that you can do, confirm that you're seeing my search here. What I'm going to do is just try to do a Google search right on here so people can see. Can you guys confirm that you're seeing that?
yep, you're good.
Okay. I just want to do a search, and what I want to search right online here is Harvard resume template. So if somebody, to your point, Dominic, that is starting early and they don't have a lot on their resume, they don't have 20 years of experience to put on a resume, there are several different ways that you can do it. You could build your own resume. We could talk more about it. But if you're going to build a resume, why not have it look like a Harvard college resume? And Harvard, in their generous spirit, have provided from their Office of Career Services to their students, they've provided these templates. And you can use that very same template in your search. So for example, here's just a 45-second search. Here's a template that anybody can use. And if you're early in your career, you might want to change these things unless you really are a Harvard graduate. You might want to change these things, but you can use those very same templates. It's already there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So here's a quick way to solve the problem of, man, Nelson, your resume is nice, but I don't have 20 years of experience, of international experience that I can put on a resume. And how do I do that to start out with? Here's finding a template isn't going to be a big problem. Here's one that I found in 45 seconds. It's something from the Harvard Office of Career Services. So it's a proven format. Dominic, I'm kind of using you as my bounce here. Can you confirm that you've seen this okay? And
Yep, it looks great. That's fantastic. It's a great resource, and like you said, it's very easy to access. So
super easy to access. I actually want to show one more thing right from the Harvard Office of Career Services. And the reason I'm using them is because it's Harvard, right? They have a nice brand name and they're, you know, uber expensive and all that stuff. We can get some of the things that they know for free. One of the things that they have published is, go back to the Zoom. One of the things that they've published is, full screen so everybody can see it. So here's a PDF that I got right from the Office of Career Services, where they tell you in resumes and cover letters, this is specifically for undergraduates, but there's other resources out there if you're a PhD candidate or graduate or whatever. But this is resources that's freely available from their publication. The one I'm seeing a 2022 version, so that's a good thing. And it's telling you, here's how you create a strong resume. Here are some tips that you can do. Here's some things to keep in mind. If you're an international candidate, here are some things that you can do, because the resumes do look completely different if you're applying to or working from a different jurisdiction outside of the United States. So there are action verbs. They're giving you very specific instructions as to how to make your resume stand out, how to make it better, how to get that basic question out of the way. And again, all I did was download this from the Office of Career Services from Harvard University on their site.
That's great. So we'll move on to the interview process.
So before we do, I'd like to do one more thing. There is what I mentioned at the end, that you might want to hire a professional writer or a coach to work you through this, because it can be very specific, right? As you pointed out, Dominic, different industries have different formats, they have different approaches. And one of the ones that I found one of the coaches, I guess, that I found very effective is, and I follow him and follow his process on LinkedIn. It's a company named Cultivated Culture. And I used his services for a search in the past. And so I found it very effective, some of the things that he's showing. But in addition to the effectiveness of his system, I'm not going to get into all that depth, but in addition to the effectiveness of his system, one of the things that he has done is he has for free some tools right on his website. And Resibuild.io is a way to create ATS-friendly resume templates right on there. So if somebody, to your point earlier, Dominic, is just starting out and they're just trying to figure out how to do it, they can go to Harvard, they can use Nelson's thing, but they can really just go on something like this and they can just put in their details and it'll spit out different templates for them to use, whatever they feel more comfortable with. He also has a couple of other free tools here that are interesting. So if you have a resume and you want to use it and see if it's got the right words or whatever, he's got this ResiMatch, this ResiBullet, Mail Scoop. He's got a couple of different things. Here's what he's saying. You can find anyone's email in question in seconds, he's saying. And the reason that's important, guys, is one of the things that we'll talk at the very end, hopefully we have time, is we're talking about resumes, we're talking about interviews, but to get there, networking is probably going to be one of the most important things you can do. And finding those emails is going to be clutch in order to be able to do that. All right, so having said and shown all this, what I want to do now is I want to switch over and talk a little bit about interviews. Dominic, you mentioned to me before we got on the call how important interviews are for the service industries.
Yeah, absolutely. The interview process, when I was hiring, was far more important to me than what they had written down on the paper. When you're hiring somebody who is going to be in a field where you're going to need dependability and going to be able to rely on them to open a restaurant at 5 a.m. or be there at till 2 a.m, closing down the place. Reliability and the character of the person is far more important.
Mm,
So for me, it was far more about getting to know them. In my personal experience, when I used to interview for chef positions or miscellaneous other things, it would be, we used to do what we called portfolios, and it was basically like a binder, and it was full of all the pictures of the different foods that you've worked on, projects that you may have managed, any sorts of different things like that. And it was always a little heartbreaking, but also somewhat good in a way. When you would get into an interview, they would pick it up, they'd look through it really briefly, then set it to the side, and then just start talking, because they don't want to necessarily look through all the stuff that you say you've done. They want to see you talk about yourself or promote yourself or be that person. So I always tend to gravitate towards the people who can self-promote the best. Not necessarily just talk a big game, but be able to feel confident enough in their skills to be able to show me what they're made of, basically. So.
I love that, Dominic, because I can tell you that for me, part of my thought process as a hiring manager, or from the employer's perspective, I should say, is I really would, when we bring somebody in for the interviews, I really want them to take me on this ride about where it is that they come from, what it is that they've done, and why it is that they're the person with the S on their chest. I want to go on this ride with them. And of course, I'm on their side because I want to solve this problem that I'm trying to solve by hiring this person. So my number one thing that I say whenever we've had these discussions is preparation is uber important. It's almost everything. And if you, from an employer's perspective, it's a great day when a candidate walks in and they have their stories ready to go, and either that STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result, or PAR, problem, action, result, whatever you want to use, but have their stories ready to go in that format that's very much understandable. Guys, interviews are too important to be left to the interviewer questions. So if this is something you really want to do in your career, if your career is dependent on you doing this, whatever that is, it's too important to be left to somebody that's going to look at your resume or your portfolio for a matter of seconds. And then what questions are they going to ask? You have to decide, or you have to be able to steer that interview conversation. So a couple of tips or whatever to take people like me on that ride, right? So the first thing is be prepared as we talk, but then be interested. So what does that mean? So you have, with each answer, my advice would be have a hook with each answer. So regardless of what question is asked, you've prepared an answer, hopefully, that you know and you can work through in the right format. But then if you say things that are really hooking the listener, if you say things like, I'm best when I do these things, that's going to perk my ear. Or my top wins, Nelson, include or are XYZ. My number one skill is I really want to hear those kind of things. The thing that fulfills me most, that's really will draw the listener's attention. If I ask you the question, whatever that question is, if you start off with, the thing that fulfills me most, XYZ, when I've done these projects in my career, that person's going to listen. Those are good hooks as you're answering those questions. There are going to be 8 questions that are almost always asked in one form or another. And if you can prepare your answers for those, you're most likely going to ace those interviews. And I'll tell you right now what those questions are. By the way, that is not Nelson's experience. That is research from some of these coaches and professionals. Another one that I'll name later on, that is actually a New Hampshire-based business, and we'll talk. I'll suggest that in a bit. But these 8 questions are some form of, tell me about yourself. Have we heard those questions before? Why do you want to work for us? Tell me about a time you exhibited leadership. Tell me about a time you worked as a team. Or tell me about a time you failed. Tell me about a time you overcame an obstacle. Tell me about a time you had to work with a difficult person or people. And lastly, tell me about a time you succeeded. You're going to hear these questions or some form of this question in over and over and over in interviews. And that if you can prepare for these questions and have those ready to go with something that's relevant, with a good hook to hook the listener and relevant to the problem they're trying to solve, you're going to ace that interview. I guarantee it. Dominic, let me just
I will say
interface with you.
I've absolutely asked every single one of those questions. I can't even tell you how many times.
There's only so many questions you can ask of another human, right? And those tend to be recurring. And one of the things that, again, what I said, as I've said earlier, the first thing the employee wants to know is, can this person do the job? So I, as an employer, I'm looking for proof that I can ask about, evidence that I can evaluate. If the candidate tells me a believable story, then man, that's good enough. But I know that with these questions that I'm telling you, if you prepare and do that with those questions, you're going to be good to go. Let me, now that I've said that, we've got plenty of time. So what if we do this? Of these 8 questions, how do you answer the tell me about yourself one? So let's go through 3 of them. So if you say, tell me about yourself, you think about these 8 questions, these are going to be asked. Tell me about yourself is a question about you. So if I ask you as a candidate, tell me about yourself, what people will say is, what's kind of expected that people will say is, my name is Nelson, I am in charge of this, and I sell shoes, and I do these kind of things. I've been doing it for 20 years. Here's my experience, and here's why I want the job. People will invariably answer this question in this way. Here's my name, this is what I do, here's my experience at doing it, and here's why I want this job. If I'm lucky, I get the number 4, by the way. I don't always even get that. But the way to really answer it that will make you put a big check mark next to your name is you start by giving me a hook. Like we started, the thing that fulfills me most is, and you tell me a story about yourself. That story should tell me a little bit about your experience and a success story. If you tell me, you give me a hook about what's important to you, what's really important, and you tell me why that experience is there and how you were successful. And lastly, please tell me why you're perfect for this job. If you do those 4 things, I'm going to put a big check mark by your name, and it'll put you ahead of 85% of the candidates that walk in the door that are unprepared and are winging their way through an interview. So how you answer, to recap, how you answer the tell me about yourself question, always give them a hook, tell them a quick story, tell them about that experience and your success. And then lastly, tell them why you're perfect for this job. Dominic, I'm just going to use you as my check. How does that feel like to you and what I've just said?
It feels really good. I think it might be helpful to say the things that you wouldn't necessarily want to mention in the tell me about yourself section as well.
Okay, gotcha. So the hiring manager, you have 60 minutes generally with a hiring manager. And where you, as I've said just a little while ago, the interviews are too important to be left to the companies and to the hiring manager. So you really want to use that time as best you can, regardless of what the question is that they ask. So the tell me about yourself is a question about you, which means that is a great opportunity for you to talk to them about your experience and your success. But a lot of people will tell me about, oh, my name is this and that. I went to this school. I majored in this. I did a great job and got a 3.9% GPA. They'll tell me all these facts that, depending on where they are in the career, I can generally read them on the resume. So one of the first thing I'll tell you not to do is to make the person feel like they're wasting your time by regurgitating what you've already handed them to them in a written document. So use that opportunity if they're asking you this question to tell them about that experience. That might be reiterated, but tell them a little story about it. But again, tell them why you're perfect for the job. I want to contrast this with the second question, which I mentioned earlier in my list of 8, which is, why do you want to work for us? So that's, again, another key question that's asked all the time. Here's what we hear all the time. I admire this company. I admire company XYZ, and I've been doing this for a long time, and I've dreamed about these things, and I know that I could come into the company and make a big difference. I hear some version of that, some version about, I admire the company. I've dreamed of working there. I've been preparing this for my whole life. I. Guys, when they ask you the question, why do you want to work for us? This question is not about you. This question is about them. And what they want to know is, did you research the company and their brand? Do you have a firm grasp on what it is that they're asking for and that they're asking you to solve? And are you excited about joining? And this is a completely different focus on, which I learned 3 years ago. Why is it that you want to work for us? It's completely different than tell me about yourself. The us is about them, not about us as a candidate. So the way to answer that question, again, the correct winner in this case would be somebody that can talk about, tell their hook. One of the things that fulfills me most, or my number one skill, I am at my best when, ... Tell them your story, a quick story. Tell them something that shows that you researched the company, that you researched their brand, you know all about them, that you know the problems they're facing, and then that you know what they're asking for and how you're going to solve it. If you show them that you're going to solve that problem for them that you know they have, you're going to have a big check mark by your name. You need to show them you're excited about joining a company, and because you know all the problems they have. And there are different ways of showing them how to do that and showing good social proof, but that's beyond the scope of this general conversation. Dominic, a gut check with you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I used to work for a fairly large company at one point, which had a very good reputation on lots of highly ranked lists in our industry. And I got often, oh, I really think I can do this here, or I would be a very good fit here because I do this. So I appreciate the idea of turning it back on the company and saying, like, this company means this to me, kind of thing. I get that.
No, that's spot on. Guys, I want to be able to say that it's always a person that has the best experience, the best skill set and all that gets the job. And I'm here to tell you that that's not always the case. It's just not always the case. So, but the person that is most prepared, the person that can really get checks off the boxes, oftentimes the person that's most confident really goes to the top of the stack. So if you give them that hook and you are really prepared, so you can hammer that question down without any ifs and ahs and without hesitating, and you're not trying to make it up on the spot, a lot of the times that person will come to the top of the stack, not necessarily because they're from Harvard or because they have the highest experience or whatever, but a lot of times it's that person that can really prove they can do the job in the way they answer these questions. Once you prove that you can do the job in answering these questions, though, one of the things that they all look for, whether we love it or not, is, can you vibe with the team? Can you fit with the team? And so as you're conveying your story, that's important for you to be able to do that. And here's I'm going to just 2 tips on that. Make them comfortable. And an easy way to make somebody comfortable that's talking to you and during an interview or just otherwise is you mimic the body language. And I can be accused, and also this is manipulative or whatever, but hey, we're trying to get this job. So a little bit of manipulation, as long as it's honest, never hurt anybody. So if you mimic their body language, will perceive a better connection with you, and they'll realize, hey, this guy is just like me. We can vibe, we can talk. The other thing that I want to say is, I just heard this recently, I wish I could name the source, but one of the recent things that I heard is that when you start, sometimes they ask you, hey, do you want a coffee or do you want a water before we get started? And most of us will say no. I'm good. Thank you very much. I came prepared. I'm very good. Why? Because we don't want to spill on our shirt or whatever the reason may be. I just heard recently that one of the things that is interesting is it's suggesting that you do it. And one of the reasons why is you say that our brain has a positive predisposition to liking people that do a favor for us, or that we do a favor for, excuse me. So if I do a favor for you, Dominic, whether it's bringing you coffee or bringing you water, my brain has a positive predisposition towards you. So a quick tip to make them comfortable and make them feel positive about this quick relationship of 60 minutes is, if they offer you, can we get you a water? Can we get you a coffee? The answer should be yes. And that was a new one for me.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. It does make sense when you kind of frame it that way. It's
when you
interesting.
think about it. So interviewing, I want to make sure that we cover paired, interesting, confidence.
Somebody in the comments wrote, if they offer water, I'll always take water. If they offer coffee, I'll always take coffee. This is not because I want to make a connection. It is because I like water and coffee.
I like it.
That's very
like
funny, Brian.
I like it. So I think I've kind of covered my material on interviews here. So wait, I'm gonna do one more. The third one of the questions that I find very difficult to deal with myself at interviews, and that is, tell me a time you had to work with a difficult person or people. For me, that's a tough one. I think that's a tough question. And for me personally, you don't feel, because one of the things you don't want to do is talk negatives, right? You don't want to have a discussion about negatives in the middle of this conversation. You have 60 minutes and you want to be able to manage that conversation as best you can. And you want to be talking about, here's some negative things that happen, et cetera. But one of the suggestions I read recently was they're looking for specifically what you did one-on-one to make that relationship work. And so without dwelling on the negative aspects on it, talking through what you did is the way to do it. So answer this question this way. First of all, you highlight the problem, because without a problem, you just don't have anything to talk about. So you highlight the problem, but then you really concentrate on these three things: how you approach the situation. What was your approach to this problem, this person, these issues that you're working with? Thirdly, what did you learn from that conversation? Because it's going to change you as a person when you deal with some difficulties of that sort. And lastly, and most important, was what mutual plan of action did you come up with, and what was the result? So in that four bullet approach, where you're talking about the positives of this difficulty, you highlighted the problem, but then you're going to move to how you approach what you learned and the action that you came and the result. It's almost really focusing on the things that you did, and that's what the company is looking for with that question.
Yeah, it's important to remember they don't want to just hear about a bad customer. Like, that's not the purpose of the story. It's more important to tell them what you got out of it. That's exactly right. Yep.
Bingo. Guys, we'll close this section on interviews, but the important thing is that when you have an interview, that is a incredible opportunity for you to connect with another human. But keep in mind that you're interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing you. You should be asking important questions, just like they're asking you these top 8 questions. You should have some questions prepared, because you want to know, do you want to work there? Do you vibe with those people too? Are you able to solve their problems successfully? Is this a place where you're going to thrive? And so it should be really a two-way street. And the interview is just a crucial opportunity to be able to do these things. Sorry, Dominic, go ahead.
Nope, I was just gonna say, what is your next section on, or should we talk about how to find a job to apply to?
Can I make a comment real quick before you move on? The unemployment rate in New Hampshire is so incredibly low that I've been working for a long time. I've been on interviews, but at this point, you really are interviewing for the best job and fit for you. Because companies are so low on employees. So remember that you're coming in New Hampshire, especially from a much stronger position than maybe 10 years ago, somebody starting out. I mean, my 17-year-old has been through 4 jobs and is now making like $20 an hour. She just kept switching up to a better job. So
Big money.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I would
fantastic.
love to say that I've had the situation recently to be picky with my interview selections, but honestly, it's typically, whoever shows up and is there consistently is going to maintain the job. So I still do a couple of side hustles. I bartend on the weekends, and we are constantly looking for people because it's hard. It's hard to find people. So.
Yeah, for it in New Hampshire, this is the time to be job searching, right? If you're going to be job searching in New Hampshire, now's the time. There's somebody's hiring anywhere you look. You can roll down everywhere you look. There's times for looking for help. Dominic, you asked me the question, what's going to be the next thing you're going to talk about? I see that we only have about 10 minutes left, but I did, to your point, want to talk about what are ways that you can find where those jobs are. And so now that you're prepared, you have your documents, you have your interview strategy, you're starting to put those things together. Good time for trying to find where those jobs are that you're going to try to go apply to, and you're going to go and talk to the people in the companies, and you're going to try to get in front of those interviewers so you can tell them why they're the perfect candidate. One of my favorite places is LinkedIn, and I'll use this time to share the screen. Okay, tells me participants can now see my application. So one of my favorite places to go is LinkedIn. You can go to LinkedIn jobs here, like I just clicked. And LinkedIn will do a lot of this work for you because it will do these searches according to who you are, and you can go through and you can find. I know you guys aren't in my business, but you can find a lot of these searches communicated back towards you. Let me hit the back button because what I really wanted to do is. So this is my post that I did today talking about this webinar, and on LinkedIn, I'll show you my profile in a minute, but I'll take this minute to show you a place that you should definitely be. If you're interested in moving to New Hampshire and you're a part of the Free State Project, I would strongly advise you that networking should be your #1 way to find things that are happening in the state, but also for looking for jobs in the right companies. And we have on LinkedIn a Free State Project networking group. It's about 600 members or so. All of them are interested in some of these things that we talk about on a daily. And we know that we can go through and we can share different things here, such as job. Here's one for a solution engineer that it's a little slow. Brian who's on this call, I believe, was sharing some of these opportunities. And these opportunities are shared on here all the time. Here's some companies that are hiring. Here's something that I heard about. Before I switch out of there, I'm going to just, my profile, computer's a bit slow, apologies. So in my profile, what I want to do is I'm showing them something about me, who I am. I also want to show them, man, so slow. So I want to show them about my experience, of course, and I want to show them some things that are not just a repeat of my resume. Because one of the good things about LinkedIn is that I can add certain different things. So I can add multimedia things and I can link those to my posts. I can do, here's some projects that I did when I was at New Balance back in the day, or when I was at Wolverine Worldwide before that. I could talk about my education, etc. But it should be more than just saying, here's what my resume looks like and put it in one page. I can show them a little bit more about who I really am. And one of the great things about this is on a resume, you're going to be limited to 1 page or 2 pages. Whereas here, I can go crazy and I can write a heck of a lot more. And I can, really tell a story, encourage them to have a networking conversation with me. I can do different things, and recruiters see these things and they search accordingly. So that's LinkedIn, and that's a tool that I strongly advocate you should use. Again, we have a safe space for FSP folks, and we can start conversations there. I think networking is very, very much crucial. So Free State Project community outreach, incredibly important. There's also Facebook groups, but Dominic, you're probably more familiar with those than I am. Like FSP Job Alert is one, Job Search, etc.
Yeah, Constance might have more than I do. I'm very bad at the whole Facebook thing. Working on it, getting better every day. But yeah, there is FSP Job Search, which is an active group, a very active group. There's the housing search too. Once you do find a job, you're going to have to find a place to stay, at least to get settled. There is. Did we ever find the name?
There's Rent-A-Port, which is more for odd jobs than an actual job. But there's a different one that's like if you need to hire somebody to move your couch type of thing.
Okay. And then honestly, just posting in the Free State Project Facebook groups and things like that, just saying like you're considering moving to the area or you're planning on moving to the area. This is my skill set. Do you know of anybody who's hiring? Or, you know, something along those lines will go a long way. It's a very active community. You'll get a post, you'll get a reply very quickly. So
yeah, Constance and I are both very well networked in the state. We've been doing this for a long time. We know thousands of people in New Hampshire, and we love helping out new movers to find opportunities here. So hit us up for networking anytime.
I do also have like a very kind of unique story. So my wife is has a very specialized job. She's a cheesemaker by trade. And there are a total of 3 cheesemakers in the total state, 3 companies that make cheese in New Hampshire. When we were planning on moving here, she sent direct emails to the people who run those companies showing what her skills were. They were not hiring. Nobody was hiring because it's a very small business in New Hampshire. But they saw her credentials and what she had done in the past. And honestly, the one offered her a job, and that's how we figured out where we were going to live. So it was based around that. So just to say, even if the opportunity doesn't seem like it's there, it's worth putting those feelers out and seeing what's out there.
I heard just recently from a wise man that I know that every business is a people business. Right, Dominic?
Yeah, I said that in passing and he liked it a lot. So, but it's absolutely true. Making those connections and just knowing how to talk to people and feeling comfortable with yourself is 90% of it. You know, the other 10% is actually the ability to do the job. It's just being able to relate to people is so important. So
important. Yeah. So from my side, even if everybody knows the industry that they're in according to their level of experience, but industry specific associations for sure. And I would lever every opportunity or every networking level you can push. So Mark's offered to Mark and Constance that are there. They've been around a long time. They know everybody. Every one of those things is a tool for you when you're looking to move to New Hampshire. So seeing that we have 5 minutes left, Dominic, as we're doing this, my suggestion is that we can share contact details or anything like that. But unless is there anything else that we need to any question that we need to handle or anything like that?
Did either of you want to add anything or?
Hey, this is Brian. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, so I just wanted to just throw out there, and Nelson has heard me say this before, that one of the things that I think people do a lot, which is not the best way to do it, is they just apply to jobs. And that's often not really the best way to do things. So I have found in my experience that when I see a job at a company that I'm interested in, the first thing I do is try to find somebody in that role in that company. You can just do a search on LinkedIn for that title, for the role title, and ideally the same geography. And then I send them a connection request, a personalized connection request on LinkedIn. And then I ask them if they recommend working in that role at that company in that geographic area, and ask if they'd be open to talking about that role and like a day in the life. And I found that about 40% of the time, people say, "I love it here. Would you like an internal referral?" Which is like crazy. So I think a lot of the time when you just apply to a job, your resume goes straight into the garbage. And so, in my opinion, it's a heck of a lot better to do this sort of side door kind of thing and try to find somebody or find somebody who knows somebody else at that company and get them to shepherd your resume into that company. So you get that internal referral. And sometimes that's not enough. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Brian, that's actually gold. And one of the things in sales is they say, there's a method in sales that they say, show me, you know me, before you kind of have to earn your way into the sale. And one of the things that's most powerful about LinkedIn is, even if you aren't necessarily friends with these people or know them personally, it gives you a way to connect with them and start to getting to know them. One of the things that Brian has wisely said is we have to keep in mind that a lot of companies give an internal incentive for those internal referrals. And so an employee getting to know you via LinkedIn might feel comfortable enough to say, you know what, there's $2,000 in it for me if this guy works out. And so using those, I mean, we understand economics in this community. And so using the incentives that are there for employees is going to work in your favor if you do it the right way. LinkedIn is a very, very powerful tool. It deserves its own hour, and maybe someday we'll do that. But great comment, Brian.
And you actually do see that on the FSP, like Facebook, people offering those are internal referrals when their company is hiring.
That's great. Well, I think that kind of brings us to the end, unless anybody has any questions or anything else they want to add before we wrap up.
Hi. No, this was just hi. This is my husband, Brian.
Hello.
This was just really, really helpful. I don't think financially we're going to be able to make the move for at least another year or so. Yeah, I thought I was a really good interviewer, and I actually learned some stuff tonight. This was really helpful.
Yeah, it was great. A lot of helpful stuff. That template is a really good idea too, that Harvard template. I want to just redo my whole resume now because of that. So
That's great.
Hey, Brian, what do you do? What are you looking for?
I'm actually in the trades. I actually have about 20 years in the restaurant industry myself, but I got out of that because it was just killing me. And but now I do electrical and plumbing work. And yeah. So I work for a basement repair company or a foundation repair company. They put in sump pumps and stuff like that. I know you guys don't have a ton of basements out there, but yeah, I do electrical and plumbing work for there. So I'll be looking for something in there. I'm actually debating on whether to work towards my licensure. There's no reciprocity with New Hampshire. If I were to get it in Ohio, that's where we're at. So I'm kind of debating on what to do about the timeline for when we want to move, but that's what we'll be. And then my wife's a nanny, professional nanny.
Yeah.
So
I can tell you right now, before we moved, I had no job lined up. I walked around the town that we ended up settling in with a resume in hand and had a job by the end of the day. So
wow.
It wasn't hard. And it was a good job too. It wasn't just like, here's $10 an hour in a restaurant. It was a management position. So they're looking for people like at pretty much any skilled trade. You're going to be able to walk right into something pretty decent. So
yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. Is when we finally bought our house here in the beginning of 21, we called because we needed some work done in the house, and we called dozens of tradespeople to do different things, whether it's electrical, plumbing, or whatever. And it was months before we could get some people back because they're just so busy.
Hear that.
So I'm here. I'm telling you, just from the customer perspective, man. If we would have had this call last year, I'd have been like, hey, what's your phone number?
I know. I just like, did you say foundation work? So I grew up in Ohio, and I think like a lot of the Midwest states, it's harder to move to New Hampshire just because the cost of living is so different.
Yeah, like our rent is going to double. If we're lucky, it'll only double.
So,
Yeah, but you will definitely have a upward trajectory for life that I didn't find in Ohio when I lived there. And I was there through a lot of the like really good years. Like I moved to Alaska in 2000. So I was there through the late 90s, where there was tons of jobs. And it's definitely, get here. I think you'll see the benefit, even with the doubling
I moved to
rent.
the East Coast from, oh, I'm sorry, Constance.
That's
I was just going to say, I moved to the East Coast from Michigan, and this is the place to be.
well, we already know that.
There are, Brian just mentioned in the chat that there are a couple of different plumbers who are already within the group, who would probably take you on in a heartbeat. So
Awesome.
plumbers, electricians, there's a whole network of them. And honestly, there's not enough because they should give us priority.
And I know 2 professional nannies who are free staters who I can
Oh,
connect
really?
you with. Mhm.
Yeah, that'd be
and
great.
they can tell you how they found positions.
Okay, yeah, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, this is great. The whole networking aspect of the Free State Project, I mean, it's really what kind of sold us. We came up to New Hampshire in probably 2012 during the Ron Paul years to check it out, but we weren't quite ready yet. But now we went to Pork Fest the last 2 summers, and now seeing all the different networking things that you guys have and real community that are helping each other is really what sold us on it. So it's really nice.
Great.
Well, I can tell you that if I can be of any help, you can of course find me on LinkedIn. We can connect directly when you guys are either visiting or deciding to make the move. And I'd like to offer that with everybody that's watching or listening, or that'll watch and listen after. If I can help in any way, just from a corporate perspective and how to deal with the corporate folks, or whatever it is, I'm happy to do that. And it's been a pleasure to talk about the things.
I'm going to plug our next week webinar too. Meet the Regions is next Monday. And then we have a bunch on our YouTube channel that you can go back and listen to from different topics.
Oh,
So if you
okay.
haven't had a chance to, like, I personally love house hacking. That's how I was able to buy in New Hampshire. So that's the one I did. So there's a lot of resources there. Please check that out.
Awesome.
Yeah,
What?
and reach out to us too individually too. We can help you with your searches and everything like that. So
Okay. Whose YouTube channel?
Oh, Porcupine Real Estate.
Real estate.
Porc-
Okay. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you very much.
great.
All right,
Well,
I'm going to end the recording.
Yep. Thanks
All
everybody.
set.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
It was
one.
nice meeting
Good
you.
night.
Thanks, guys.